We'll do a review. We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek Tazayin. This is volume 16, the third Sicha for Purim. In this Sicha, the Rebbe brings down some basic principles in which we should sort of interrupt our learning in order to go out and save lives. The Rebbe brings down from Mordechai, the Rebbe starts off with the Gemara that not everybody was happy with Mordechai, but the Rebbe explains that it doesn't really mean that they disagreed with him, but they actually separated from him because they had a different view of how one should keep learning Torah even in the face of very important work for the saving lives of the community, as the Rebbe is going to elaborate and explain, articulate the two Gemaras, the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, that the Ragachover once used to say why he could not participate and give time for the community work because of the Bavli's language, that it's only mishtameres, the learning that you already accumulated will only be guarded but not increased, and he still needs to learn, as we'll see in the Sikha. But let's go step by step. The Sikha for Purim Gimel. So Aleph. So the first, the Rebbe starts with the Gemara on the pasuk that it says that it ends in the Megillah that Mordechai was accepted to most of his brothers, that most of the Sanhedrin agreed with Mordechai, but that would mean that there was a big portion that did not disagree with him. And the Rebbe points out that in the Gemara, we learn it out from a pasuk, and what's the purpose of the pasuk, as we'll see. On this, that it states in the end and the conclusion of the Megillah. So the pasuk states, Ki Mordechai ha-Yehudi v'goymer, Mordechai the Yehudi, etc. The pasuk says, V'rotzu l'roiv echo v'goymer, he was accepted by most of his brothers. Zogen Razal in Gemara, our sages of blessed memory say in the Gemara, Leroiv Echav, the pasuk specifically says to the majority of his brothers, which really tells us Veloy Lechol Echav, but he was not accepted to all of his brothers. Melamed, this teaches us. Shapir Shumi Mimenu Miksa Sanhedrin, that part of the Sanhedrin, those are his friends, have separated themselves from him. Varum Echov Zayin Chavedov Shahoyu Miklal Anshe Knesses Hagdola. His brothers were his buddies, his friends that were included and part of the men of the great gatherings. So some of the men of the great gatherings that were Chavedim of Mordechai, they separated themselves from him. And that's why only the majority of the friends agreed with him, but some did not. Rashi is mefarish them tam farvos. So Rashi says, why did they separate some of them? Farvos mikza Sanhedrin haben sich perish given from Mordechai. Why did some, a part of the Sanhedrin, separate themselves from Mordechai? Since he wasted time of Torah study, learning the words of Torah, and he has got into becoming a official. He went into the Serora to dominance, becoming official in the government. So therefore, some of the Sanhedrin separated. Following this statement, the Gemara continues with another statement. One of them is the Gemara Mamshich. Afterwards, the Gemara continues, Godel Talmud Torah Yosel Matzolos Nefoshes, that the study of Torah is even greater than saving lives. The Gemara says, how do we see that? That studying Torah is even greater than saving lives. The Mikore Koshim Lei LeMordechai Basar Dalet. In the beginning, before Mordechai became part of the government, Mordechai was counted after the first four, which means in the importance of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, he was number 4. He was after number 4, he was number 5. And then at the end, when the Pasuk counts Mordechai, we see that Mordechai came Basar Chamisha. First, there were 5 ahead of him. So he was moved in rank 1 lower. He was after 5, so he was 6th. So in the beginning, he was the 5th, and then he was the 6th. The Gemara brings down from the Psukim, from Ezra and Nehemiah, as in früher Dingen Pasuk in Ezra, in the previous Pasuk in Ezra, wird Mordechai gerechnet als der 5. He is counted as the 5th. Und in weiter Dingen Pasuk, and then later on in the Pasuk in Nehemiah, he's counted as the 6th. He's the 6th. And the reason is, as the Gemara says, is because, or Rashi, the Gemara Megillah says, the fish and Nasim Mordechai Sar Bein the time. Because in the interim, Mordechai became an official and a government official. Yored Mechashibusei Tzal Chachamim. He has gone down from his importance by the Chachamim. So from 5th, they put him into 6th. He's no longer as important. The Rebbe is move on. So it's not understood. First of all, already the Pasuk in Megillah that we started off, it says Leroiv Echov. So we already see that Mordechai was already tainted. Some of them didn't agree. So we see already the rule that one is greater to learn Torah than Atzos Nefashos from this pasuk itself. Why do we need to bring the pasuk that he from 50 became 6th in the importance? Is it move on? This rule that it is greater the study of Torah more than saving lives. In der Megillah Gufa. So the sages of blessed memory can learn this from the simple verse in the Megillah itself, since it says Leroiv Echov to the majority of his brothers, as the Gemara says. This means, this teaches us, says the Gemara, that some of the Sanhedrin have separated from him. Was their Pirshu is not given the far? Why did they separate? The far was bottled with Divrei Torah, as we quoted before from Rashi, because he stopped learning Torah. Why did he stop it? It's Sulibatzos Nefashos. So we see already that even though he separated himself from Torah because of saving lives, it is still by some Chachamim, by some of them, they weren't accepting it. So Farvos, learn those the Gemara Rois from Ashinu Seder. So how come the Gemara needs to learn this? That there's a change in the order of where Mordechai belongs, 5th or 6th, and from Shloibim Koyme, something different, not in the place, not in the Megillah, in which we're discussing clearly that what he became when he became the government official. We're learning it out of 2 psukim, 2 separate books of the Tanakh. Why don't we have evidence from the pasuk itself over here in the Megillah that we're learning that some of them didn't agree? Is a siman that saving lives is not as important Torah from the fact that some of them didn't agree. And we'll see, as the Rebbe says, that but yet the majority was with him, as the Rebbe will explain all this. But first, the Rebbe brings down an answer that it's basically, the Gemara is bringing the proof, because since the Over here, we just see the Sanhedrin weren't happy with him. How do we know Hashem agrees with that? How do we know that it is a fact that you should rather learn Torah than saving lives, that this is Godel? Okay, the Sanhedrin, who says that that's correct? So the Gemara brings a pasuk, but the Gemara says, we're talking about Sanhedrin. So, as I and Dome Forshim, there are commentators who answer, as from Loshen and Megillah Kemen Nora Rishlanen, that from the language of the Megillah, you can only learn as by Sanhedrin is Talmud Torah Gevem Mer Choshev Yatzolos Nefoshes. That by the Sanhedrin, the study of Torah was more important than saving lives. Says Aber Nitokim Bavais, there is no proof in the pasuk as Mishamayim Otman der zu Maskim given that from the heavens they agreed to the Sanhedrins or the Miktzah Sanhedrin, that there is a problem with what Mordechai did, becoming a government official. Therefore, bring the Gemara them limud, and also the Meforshim explains that's why the Gemara brings the psukim from Ezra and Nehemiah. Would the Torah Gufa Hodos Meram is given, where the Torah itself hints to the fact that Mordechai becomes from number 5 to number 6. In them Shinua say there psukim in the order of Mordechai's position in this psukim to show that the pasuk says that he was in a lower level, so that is evidence. But their tirus is al derech hamshat nit glatik. The Rebbe doesn't accept this answer based on the simple logic. It's not smooth, this answer. The was pirshu mimenu and nit given stop mentioned. Those who separated themselves from Mordechai weren't just ordinary people. Not Echov pirshu mimenu. Echov, this was his brothers. So how could we say that this was something which was not acceptable? We need a pasuk for that. That should be sufficient. Was in Yonam and Hogam is Psak Alocha B'Torah. They ruled according to Torah. This was the friends of the Sanhedrin. Is Bufeldo the Raya Mishamayim Miskimu? So why is there missing the evidence that they agreed from Shemayim? Ois base. Oich is schwer zu verstehen. In addition, it's also difficult to understand. Aleph. The Baldas Godel Talmud Torah Yitzhak Matzolos Nefoshes. So since learning Torah is greater than saving lives, why was he only moved one seat? They should take him out of the Sanhedrin altogether. Ein Farvos is Mordechai's nomen der Far was bottle mit Talmud Torah. So why is Mordechai's name for the reason that bottle mit Talmud Torah? Ibergishtel geworden, it was only placed nor mit ein Darge weiter in Seder von den Nemen, only with one step further in the order of the names. From Basar Dalet to Basar Hey, after 4, he became after 5 instead of being 56. L'chayrot hat noch überhaupt nicht gedacht gerechnet werden zwischen the Chavrei HaSanhedrin. It seems like seemingly should have at all not been counted amongst the Sanhedrin. V'zeir inyan is Piskei Dinei Torah. What is the Sanhedrin? They rule the laws of the Torah. And if he's no longer in that area of studying, and he's now in the government, he should have been removed altogether from the Sanhedrin. The Rebbe wants to point out from all these different questions that we're going to see, it's not as simple as it seems that somehow this is greater and that's a value. There's a lot more distinction over here, as we're going to see. Number 2, the Rebbe says, based from Mashmos HaPosuk is verstandig, from the understanding, when we read, as it seems from this verse, we can understand as Mordechai's Soror als Mishnah Lemelech, that Mordechai's government appointment as second to the king of Achashverosh had gedoyer tameshach zman, that lasted for a time, for some time, it was for a long time, was Damut Izer given at that time that he was second to the king. He was Ratzui Blois L'Reiv Echav. He was only accepted to most of his brother, which is a matzah pun pirshu mimenu, which is a situation that they had separated from him. Is memonashach. So it seems like there was a break over there. Some of them broke from him. So why wasn't that a discussion amongst them to decide what the right thing is? Other Mordechai would say, either Mordechai needed to prove to them, Azainan Hog is Alpi Torah, that what his conduct is according to the Torah, that he's the right, that's what he needs to do according to the Torah. Or if not, he should have left his dominance. And then leave that position and become accepted to all of his brothers. So why wasn't that a point to either he convinces them or they convince him? But the Rebbe explains, you see it in the language itself. It's not like everybody went against Mordechai. The opposite is true. It was only the majority to Mordechai. And therefore, that doesn't mean that Mordechai did something wrong, and we can't prove that Mordechai, that you learning Torah is greater. Why? Because some of them, well, that's only the minority. Majority stuck with Mordechai. But Rebbe wants to know that really we need to understand why was there objection from the others, and how do we reconcile the fact that the Gemara says that the other pasuk, which that they did demote him. So what's going on? This Rebbe is going to explain that. Gimel. The explanation in this is understood from the specific language of the Megillah, the Roshas Razal, and the expounding of our sages of blessed memory. They say, he was accepted to majority of his brothers, and it says, that there was only a part, some of the Sanhedrin separated. But thus made, what that really means as in Sanhedrin, that most of his brothers in Sanhedrin, they did agree to the conduct of Mordechai. So therefore we understand. Rabbi asked before, why do we need to bring other psukim that learning Torah is greater than saving lives? We can't bring a raya from this pasuk over here, because actually, on contrary, the majority agreed with Mordechai that he should have done this. So b'meila is verstanding b'pashtus. As from them was pirshu b'menu miksa Sanhedrin, from the fact that some of the Sanhedrin did separate from him, is klal nitoki raya. There is at all no evidence as Talmud Torah is greater from hatzolos nefoshes, that learning Torah is greater than saving lives. You don't see that because the minority separate, but the majority went with him. Adrabah, if you can learn out, you can learn out that saving lives is greater because most of the people agree with Mordechai. Adrabah, for them, Kemen Arislan and Valkert, we can actually learn from this just the opposite. The Bald as Surayv Sanhedrin is given Rotsui, since he was accepted to the majority of Sanhedrin. Thus, that means they are with one opinion. They agree together with Mordechai. So that means that Mordechai did the right thing. So we can learn out that we should stop learning in order to serve in the government to Hatzolos Nefashos. And also, this explains to us, the Rebbe asked, How come he was only moved one position, not more? Because this wasn't so simple. Most of them agreed with him. And the mitzvah but we also understand was Mordechai's nomen is to leave them übergestellt geworden. That Mordechai's name was because of this only move, nor mit ein Darge weiter, just with one step further. Hayois, since, as Adrabe, on the contrary, Reuv Chavrei Sanhedrin, most of the members of the Sanhedrin haben eingestimmt mit seinen Hanhoge. They agreed with his conduct. Okay, so it means that actually Mordechai was doing some of the right things, and that's why it was only moved one, because still there was a little dissent over there, and we don't have proof. But the question becomes, what's going on over here? On the other hand, because how come the majority could not convince and override the minority? And then there seems to be a contradiction from these two following statements of the Gemara. In the first statement, it says that the majority, the Megillah that we're quoting over here, agreed with Mordechai. That means that it's more important to save lives than learning Torah. And then the Gemara brings just the opposite statement, that it's greater to save lives more than learning Torah because he was pushed back on the mid. But according to this, it is difficult on the other side. Aleph. The bald as Mordechai's Hanhoge is given beheskem mit der Deya von Reuv Chavrei Sanhedrin, since the conduct of Mordechai came with the agreement, with the view of most of the members of the Sanhedrin, so then that should have decided and outweighed the opinion of the minority, the mixas. How come they separated themselves from him? Und sie haben nicht mevatel gemacht, sehr das hamiut gegen dem Rav. How come they did not subjugate and negate their own opinion, which is in the minority, against the majority? Why did they insist, and why did they remain that way when the majority ruled against them? And base and number two, them come to us. According to this, it turns out as the tzvei maimorei chazal hanal, that the above two mentioned statements of our sages of blessed memory that Gemara quotes here, was the Gemara bringt in ein hemshach, the Gemara brings it in one flow. Pirshu mimenu nor mikza Sanhedrin. That first statement, that only part of the Sanhedrin have separated themselves, didn't accept of the Sanhedrin except Mordechai, which means the minority did, and also the Godel Talmud Torah Yosef Atzolos Nefoshes. The second Torah statement that says that Torah study is greater than saving lives, they're contradicting one another. According to the first statement, most of them agreed what Mordechai did. In the second statement, it says that the Talmud Torah is greater than saving lives. The Rebbe explains, when we use the word over here, Pirshu, they separated, they didn't accept it, didn't mean a real disagreement. It's a strange language that we use over here. The word Pirshu means that they separated, in other words, they agreed that there is such a conduct, that this is okay, it's not a contradiction. But yet, they separated themselves, they said there is another way, another direction, as the Rebbe will bring down for the Ragachover Goyen with the previous Rebbe, when he asked him to serve on a committee to help and to save lives, and the response of the Ragachover. Let's look inside Dalit. Is that close the kibir in them, behegdim nochadiv b'maimer chazal zeh. So the general explanation in this is by first introducing another specific language that is used in this particular saying of our sages of blessed memory. They used the lotion of Pirshu Mimenu Mikza Sanhedrin. They separated from him part of the Sanhedrin. Unit does not say Choku Olav, they disagreed upon him. Or that I'll call Ponim, or even in not such a strong language, you could still say Ein Ruach Mikzas Chachomim Noicha Himenu. The part of the Chacham and the spirit and the ideas of part of the Chacham was not comfortable with the path that Mordechai chose. It doesn't say that. Kodema. Because Pirshu Mimenu made, what does it mean, Pirshu Mimenu? Nit amachloikes. This does not mean a disagreement. That would mean that according to their view, Mordechai's conduct is not according to the Torah. That's not, Pirshu means nor. Azei haben sich von ihm abgesundert, that they just separated themselves from Mordechai. Haben dich aber Sunderung und anderen derech Beshita. They had a distinct, and a different path, a different view in Hanhogas from Chavri Sanhedrin, how the members of the Sanhedrin should conduct themselves. Other Talmidei Chacham Bechlal, or sages in general, Talmidei Chacham in general, they had a different path. The Loi Darko Darko, and the path of Mordechai is not the path of the other minority in Sanhedrin. But they also agreed as Mordechai and Hoge b'negeya la'atzmai, that Mordechai's conduct, as far as it relates to him in his situation, he is allowed to, and he should follow his aderech hapitorah is or hapitorah. They didn't disagree that what Mordechai was doing is wrong. They just said that their way is not his way. They separated from that way. Das boring them, but I'm verstandig euch. The explanation would also be understood. That is understood from Asipur wegen dem Ragachover going wegen Agosei. There's a story about the genius of Ragachev, Rabbi Yosef Rosin, and his conduct. In them, and explaining what took place with the Ragachover God. Nachdem die Kveit Kedushas Meiduchop Admur is a rausgefahren von Russland. After where my father-in-law, the Rebbe, has journeyed outside, left Russia, und angekommen in Riga, and he came to Riga. Hat dort verrufen Asifa von Rabbonim. So he called for a gathering of the rabbis, Higim and leaders, und Askonim and activists, v'chulu, l'toivas the Russische Eden, to benefit the Russian Jews. Zwischen the Eingeladene, amongst those that were invited, is given that Ragachover was also the Ragachover was there as well. By their Asifa, during that meeting, at Megivot Bashtimen Avad, they wanted to set up a committee for Zol sich zusammenkommen mizman lizman, that should get together from time to time, und sich meyashiv sein, and figure out ways wie zu führen die Arbeit für die Russische Eden, how to conduct with the work to benefit its Russian Jews. Und man hat gebeten der Ragachover, als soll sich mishtater sein in dem Vad, and they asked the Ragachover that he should participate in this committee. Hat sich aber abgesagt. He refused, however, und hat Masbir given, and he explained, as ein reingehen in Vad, that for him to enter to this committee is totally in a plukta. This would depend, this is a disagreement whether he can enter this Vad or not. This is a disagreement zwischen Talmud Bavli und Yerushalmi, between the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. And as he concluded over there, when there is a disagreement between the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud, the ruling remains like the Babylonian Talmud, and according to the Babylonian Talmud, he cannot become a member of that committee. What did he mean? He said like this: the Gemara Zokti Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas says, "As Chasidim Arishonim Hoyushoyim," that the earlier Chasidim, it took them a very long time. They would delay, and it took him 9 hours a day. They would daven. For each prayer, they daven 3 hours, 1 hour preparing, 1 hour after, and 1 hour praying, times 3 prayers. Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv. It totaled up to a total of 9 hours a day. 9 hours every day. The earlier Hasidim were busy davening. Like the Gemara, so the Gemara asks if it took him so many hours in the day to davening, how will their Torah be guarded? They're never not reviewing it, they're not learning. And how is their work done if they're always davening? When the Gemara answers this: since they were Hasidim, they were righteous. So therefore, their Torah was guarded. Yeah, they didn't actually have to learn. And their work has been blessed, so they were able to do this. All right. That's the language in the Gemara in Brachas. Language is that their Torah was guarded. That means whatever they learned was kept and kept on them. But in the Yerushalmi, it changes it from Mishtameres to Mizbarechas, was blessed. In Yerushalmi brings it, there's Ober Inyan. Over there, it brings down the same idea. Nor Mitashini, there's a change. Anstatt, instead, that because they were Hasidim, their Torah was guarded. And the blessing and the work was blessed. State al yidei shehoyu Hasidim, because they were Hasidim. There was a blessing given into their learning, and a blessing in their work. So now we're talking about not only was it guarded, it says in the Yerushalmi, their Torah, but there was a blessing. What is the difference, the chiluk, if we say guarded or blessed? The language used in the Babli, that the Torah was kept, and that there was blessing put in their Torah, is movement. It's understood. Mishtameres meant nor. What does it mean, guarded? She'ein talmudom mishtakach. As Rashi in Bracha says, that their study has not been forgotten, so they didn't have to review it, so it was kept. But there's nothing new in their Torah. There's no addition. They're just keeping what they have. Nor vivels they can't learn in the Zman Muad. The only time they can add to their Torah is in that little bit of time that is left when they are not occupied in tefillah. 9 hours, whatever is left for learning Torah, they can. But the hours that they're davening, they're not adding anything to their Torah. But when we use the language of the Yerushalmi, that there is blessing given in the Torah, that means that they would succeed to understand and to get the ideas immediately without delay. Basically, it's the words of the Pnei Moshe and the Yerushalmi. Basically, it means that in the little time that they would learn, they would understand immediately, so they would gain a lot of Torah in the little time that they did spend learning Torah. It says, as need nor forgets they need to learn, not only do they not forget that what they learn, but actually there's an addition to them is added in Havonas v'Yidiyas HaTorah, in understanding and knowledge of the Torah. In dem Zman Mud Vosei Lernen, in this little time that they do learn, left over, they succeed to understand and to become smart immediately. In other words, in the little time left, they can accomplish a lot more. This that naturally, according to their nature, both of them, which would require a lot more time of studying Torah, they can do it immediately, very soon. So this is the Gemara's two approaches of the Babli and the Yerushalmi, whether it's just kept or it's also increased. So what does the Ragachover says? This is also the case in our case. It says Ragachover, through this that he will participate in the committee, that the Muslim then he will have to waste time from his time that he takes Torah. Is loit in Yerushalmi, according to the Yerushalmi, says the Ragachover, that because they were Chasidim, there was a blessing placed in the Torah. That him felony in the Torah, so he won't be missing anything in the knowledge of Torah because it's going to be blessed. He's going to spend the time in the committee, but then he's going to be able to make it up. But since the ruling is like the Babli, Asis blois Torah mishtameres, that the only thing is that the Torah is guarded. So he will be lacking the addition in the studying and the knowledge of the Torah. Which he would have been able to have when he learned Torah in his money, if he would be studying Torah in those times. One of them and he cannot forego that. So he said he cannot become part of that committee because the ruling is like the Babli, and Torah is going to be kept, but he still needs to increase job. Hey, so Rebbe says that these two styles, the reason the Babli says and the Yerushalmi says what they say, is actually connected to the style of study of the Babli and the Yerushalmi. The Yeshloiman, as there has been in the Machlekes and now Tzavishim Babli Yerushalmi, we can say that the explanation in the above disagreement between the Babli and Yerushalmi is verbunden mit dem Chilik in dem Oifen Halimut zwischen sie, is tied in the difference in the way we study Babli and the way we study Yerushalmi. The Oifen Halimut in Talmud Babli, the way we study the Babylonian Talmud, is mit aribu shakle v'tari v'chubu. There's a lot of questions and answers, a lot of debate. There's a lot of give and take. With the Gemara Zok, as the Gemara says, the Pasuk says, "B'machashakim hoishivani," he has placed me in darkness. Said Talmud Shabbavel. This is the Babylonian Talmud. That it's dark. The limud is al derech ve'einer v'zucht in der finster. When you study, there is just like somebody is looking in the dark. When it's not open, it's not light, you can't see. It takes a lot of searching. It takes a lot of effort. Fragen kushias, you have to ask questions. You got to sort it out. Until you reach the true meaning and conclusion. Oh, but in Talmud Yerushalmi, but the style of the Jerusalem Talmud is the limud in an oifen yosher. Over there, the study is direct. you find immediately the correct idea and the correct answer. But einer was zeta zacht in the lichtigkeit, like somebody who sees in the light. So you can find it right away. You don't have to go searching about it. And therefore, it turns out it needs to come from this as a result. As loy der shiton oifon halimut fun babli, that according to the style and the view of study of the Babli, ken durchun limud muad for Chasidim Harushonim. So then the little study of Chasidim Harushonim, oivgiton werden, you can only accomplish nor der inyan und teirosem ishtameres, you can only have the Torah guarded. They sollen nicht vergessen the divre Torah was milerund, that they shouldn't forget the words of Torah and study. Aber nicht, you can't reach at that time as so noch sein in an Eifu, that it should be in a way from Barucha nitenes b'teirosem. There should be a blessing in the Torah, lahavin al-haskel meyat, to understand and grasp immediately. Was is it masim to say that alimut from Babli? Babli doesn't get things quickly done. Babli takes give and take. It's a different kind. It's a machshakim. So it doesn't really fit that a little time you're going to come to the right conclusions. Oh, on the other hand, according to the view and the style of learning of the Yerushalmi, so then their study also accomplishes this idea of having a blessing given in the Torah. It's lichul oven haskil miyad lo yishoyim. They succeeded to understand me without delay. This fits with learning in a straight, in a direct way, as mekum bal to me that you immediately reach to the idea the way it's in truth, and therefore that doesn't have to take so much time, and that's why it can also be terosim izbarachas. So in Ois Vav, the Rebbe will explain that actually the majority of the people from the Sanhedrin were people that were in the style of the Yerushalmi, and because according to the Yerushalmi, Terosa Mizbareches, that is the style, and therefore most of their view was together with Mordechai, that he should leave the Sanhedrin and not leave, but to get involved with the government, Tatzolos Nefashis. So based on this, we can say, as der chiluk tzuvishun hanhogas Mordechai, that the difference between the way Mordechai conducted himself, Sheretsuya, the Shitos Reva Sanhedrin, which was accepted to the view of most of Sanhedrin, and then under Shita from mixed Sanhedrin, and what was the view of the part of the Sanhedrin that disagreed, is Tolu in der Plukta Anal Tzushin Bavli in Yerushalmi. That hinges on the above mentioned disagreement between the Bavli, whether the Torah can only be kept, or according to the Yerushalmi, that it's actually blessed. The Sanhedrin Gedoyla, the high Sanhedrin, was Mokiklibun, for the Sanhedrin Kitano, which was picked from the smaller Sanhedrin. From the smaller Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin of 23 went to the Sanhedrin of 71. So you pick the people from the Sanhedrin Gedoyla, from the Sanhedrin Kitano, was Mekoimam Birushalayim. So where did the Sanhedrin Gedoyla and Sanhedrin Ketana, their place was in Yerushalayim. Bakoponim Beretz HaKodesh. At least Sanhedrin Ketana, you had in other places also, but it was all in Eretz Yisrael. Is Mistaber Tzuzogun, so it's therefore logical to say, Azer Limud Al Koponim from Ruban, that the way they studied is given with the Seder Limud HaYerushalmi, that they went in the style the order of the study of Yerushalmi. Ubefrat in Zman HaMishnah va'anche Knesset HaGedolah, especially during the time of the Mishnah and the people of the Great Gathering. Most of them were people from Eretz Yisrael. But the Rebbe adds over here, this paragraph is not so clear to me how to, but the Rebbe adds over here, aber euch dann seine gewähnt Tanoim from Babel. Basically to mean it wasn't only Yerushalmi, there were also at that time, the time of Anshe Knesset Agdol, the Mishnah, there were some Tanoim from Babel. Al derech v'shpeter, similar to later Hillel Olam Babel. Hillel came from Babel. That took place later on. The same thing in Rav Nosson Habavli, we call him Habavli, as Rashi brings down that he came from Babel, V'oid and others. Ubefrat, especially, the Rebbe says that this time of Mordechai, that took place already a long time when they brought back the Knesset HaGedolah, that so schon durchgegangen mehr wie 70 Jahre vom Zman, wenn HaChedesh v'HaMasgir seinem weg Yerushalayim im HaGoyla asher hognu l'soyim yechonu l'Babel. This was 70 years have passed, because the whole story with Achashverosh was that he took out all the Kalim because he thought that the Yidden weren't going to be freed anymore. He miscalculated, but the pasuk says that the Chedesh v'Hamazgir, those were considered the Talmidei Chachamim and the knowledgeable people. So they were exiled first with the Goyla that was exiled by Yechonya Melech Yehuda. That was before 11 years before the Golus Yisrael was the Golus Yehuda. So he counted the 70 years wrongly, but in any event, it was already a long time. It was 70 years. Und wurde die Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, who are they? So in other words, the Rebbe is trying to bring out, I think, over here that they weren't Babylonian people, they were already came back to Eretz Yisrael. Und Anshe Knesset HaGedolah seine given, Mishvi HaGoylah, they were from the exiles, from those who were captured in the exile, Asher Hegla Nebuchadnezzar Melech Babel. That's Nebuchadnezzar Melech Babel exiled the Yeshuvu Yerushalayim Yehuda, and they came back to Yerushalayim and Yehuda Bishnas Achas LeKodesh. That was already the first year of Kodesh. So, which is 52 Yor seine sie given the Babel. So they were 52 years in Babel. Aber euch von Achedesh v'Hamazgir was noch Yerushalayim, but also the Chedesh and the Mazgir, which while they were still in Yerushalayim, they already had this advantage of being Yerushalmi, learning like the Yerushalmi. This paragraph, I'm struggling to translate this paragraph. I gotta look at this further, find out. The Rebbe is trying to say that during the time of Mordechai, the people that were in the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the Chavedim, were basically mostly according to the style of Yerushalmi, which is only Toirosam Mishtameres, which is the style of Toirosam Mizbareches, Toirosam Mizbareches, and therefore it was okay for Mordechai to go, and most of the Sanhedrin agreed because they were mostly Yerushalmi. How were they mostly Yerushalmi? So that's what this paragraph is trying to explain over here. But the Rebbe starts off with Hillel and Rabbi Nosson, who later came from Babel. And the Rebbe is trying to say that. So I don't know. I'm going to leave this paragraph as I read it, but again, I got to read this to understand this paragraph. It's not so clear to me. But the point is clear what the Rebbe is trying to say. How exactly this fits in the time frame over here. Got to go look this over again. But the bottom line is the people of the Sanhedrin at the time of Mordechai were basically Yerushalmi style, come from Eretz Yisrael, the Riber, and therefore, had Mordechai v'roiv ha-Sanhedrin gehalten. So Mordechai and the majority of the Sanhedrin, they were of the view as muz werden a Mishnah lemelech zu libat solos nefoshes, that he must become second to the king in order to save lives. Wie kann noch bleiben in Sanhedrin? How could he still remain part of the Sanhedrin and the man of the great gathering? Whose matter, what's their involvement is Torah and Hira and instruction. What is al yidei shehoyu chasidim? Because they were chasidim, as the languages in the Yerushalmi, so there was blessing in the Torah. Obemela, that der habun hatzloche nit nor in an oifen von Torah mishtaberes. Not only will the success be that the Torah they learned will be guarded, but also to understand and to become smart immediately. So in other words, they would increase the learning. So misbarach werden und steigen and lernen, to be blessed and to grow in learning, mehr wie Leuten Zman, was es bleibt bei ihm, the Torah. More than the time that remains to learn Torah after all the community work, that work is going to be blessed and it's going to see success. That was the main. Es hat sich aber gefunden zwischen Chavri ha-Sanhedrin, but amongst the members of the Sanhedrin, it was euch am Mikzas, Hazelche, there were also some was sehr offen alimud is given, bedoimer zum derech alimud from Talmud Bavli, those that were similar to the style of study of Talmud Bavli, Kiniskel as mentioned earlier. So maybe when the Rebbe was talking about the previous paragraph of he's trying to say that there were over there also, but then the hemshech of this paragraph is still. But nevertheless, the fact is that most of the Sanhedrin were from Yerushalayim style, Talmud Yerushalayim, from Eretz Yisrael, who the Torah was blessed, so they thought that he should go and become part of the government because his Torah will be blessed. And a minority was actually from the style of Bavel, and they were of the view that Pirshu Memenu. And the Riber, by that minority, it was they given their oifum from blois to Rosh Mishtameres. By them, it was only the level that the Torah was guarded. Was durch Obgeben sich mit Inyone Haskonus Vatzolus Nefoshes, that by devoting themselves to matters of communal activities and saving lives, that felon in Hisofa B'Idiyas HaTorah, they will be missing out in the additions of knowing Torah, was for the Chavrei HaSanhedrin. That is the mandate of the Sanhedrin. They themselves, they need that. If they're going to be in the Sanhedrin, they have to constantly learn Torah. The Far Pirshu Mimenu Miktsas Sanhedrin. That's why they separated some of the Sanhedrin. Bazeyot nit gekennt sein der Eufen ha'avoda. By them, there could not be the style of service for Mordechai, the Reva Sanhedrin, for Mordechai and the majority of the Sanhedrin. Und sie haben sich von ihm abgesondert, and they separated from him in their eigenem derech, in their own way. In their way, they needed to continue being involved just in learning Torah. Now, in Onev Siv Daled, as we said before in the beginning of Siv Daled, that their avoida needed to be in a way which was only to learn Torah. So, not that there is a disagreement of what's the right or wrong, but it's for different people. There's a different thing that works for different people. Some people of the Sanhedrin needed to be in a way that they're only learning Torah. That's the only way that they can be in the Sanhedrin. And some of them separated from Mordechai's in the majority, who said that you have to be involved in activity of saving lives in communal affairs, and the Torah that you will have time to learn will be blessed, and you'll be successful in that short amount of time, more than naturally, and therefore you would continue to grow in Torah, because that's the way it is from the Yerushalmi perspective. Zion. 7. Oizai. Agam. As Leute Shita von Yerushalmi is Bracha Nitna B'Teirasa. According to the view of the Yerushalmi, there is blessing in the Torah. Und der Riber hat Mordechai gehat euch die Bracha beinyan von Haisofa Idis HaTorah. And therefore, he had this addition. So in that case, the question was, so why did he lose a level from the 5th, he went down to the 6th. He did descend from his importance by the Chacham. So leave them, as Rashi said and quoted before, because of the fact was he wasted from the words of Torah and he entered into the government, the governance. Warum? Because as is Faran, Maila miyuchedes in dem derech from Teirosum Nosum. There is a unique advantage in the path of just studying Torah. Torah becomes your crafts. Nit zu mevatel sein für limud zu lieb kein Zach. So there is a uniqueness about that and a unique advantage not to waste of study for no matter. Even if practically you won't be lacking in the Hisofa B'Diyas HaTorah. You won't be missing out in additional knowledge of Torah. There's blessing there. So you are not losing out in your knowledge of Torah. But yet, there is something about just being involved in Torah, even if it doesn't mean that you are losing information because you're involved in governance. And this is what the sages of blessed memory mean when they say, Godel Talmud Torah Yetzer Atzolos Nefoshes. They don't mean literally. There is a greatness in the Torah study more than saving lives. As is doa gadlus, there is a greatness in dem Aufgeben sich in ganzen auf Limudat Torah, to totally devote yourself to the study of Torah. Und bald as by Mordechai is the gadlus, since by Mordechai this greatness nismaid geworden, it was diminished because he wasn't just occupied with Torah. Is euch geworden am miut, so there also became a lessening became a yerida, there became a descent, diminished. His important by the Chacham was diminished as well. As Ashtot to their Mont Veren Basar Dalet, that instead of mentioning him after 4, as the number 4, is that their Mont Givarim Basar Chamisha, he's mentioned after 5, number 6. So there is a diminishing over here. Yes, because you don't have that special designation of Teirosum Umnosum, even if it doesn't affect your knowledge in Torah. And that takes down the. That means that it's greater in the way that Atzolos Nefoshes to keep that designation, that Maila of Teirosum Umnosum. Aber von deswegen, and yet, hat Mordechai Beroiva Sanhedrin gehalten. So Mordechai and the majority of Sanhedrin were of the view, as it had gedacht werden am Mishnah Lebelach, that he should have become, he needed to become second to the king. By la fila as durch dem soll bei ihm fällen the gadlus, even though that through this he will be lacking the greatness from Godel Talmud Torah is great, is as kedai to leave them inyan from Atzolos Nefoshes. It is worth it because of the matter of saving life. To zayin adoirish toiv la'amoy, to be seeking good for his people, v'doiver shalom l'chol zarei, and to bring and speak peace for all of his seed. Yes, but the Rebbe wants to know now. Okay, fine, he had to do what he had to do. But how could he still remain in the Sanhedrin when he was not anymore in the level of Teirosum Umnosum? That is what Sanhedrin is. L'chayre ches is over 40 klapping. It's still not smooth. Estakas machmas dem was brochan itenes b'Teirosum. Let it be that it's true. That because there is blessing in their Torah, but by Mordechai need get felt. So Mordechai wasn't lacking afilu in the race of a b'di Torah, even in the addition to Torah, because he was able to accomplish it in a very short time. Unem hestak, and let it be true as a sido amayle in Atzolos Nefoshes, there is an advantage in saving lives. Was to leave them is kidai the that it's worth for that purpose to save life. The descent, it's a descent, but it's worth it. As only Zayin Torah, so that he's not going to be, Torah is not going to be his craft. He's going to lose that. But how still could he remain one of these Sanhedrin? Was l'cheire kol inyonom is nor limud haTorah. It would seem that what is the Sanhedrin is to study Torah and teach Torah, but he is doing other things. How could he remain? Yes, you have to give it up. Give it up. Become a Mishnah Lamelech. Become a Mishnah Lamelech. You're going to get enough Torah, yes. But how could you be in the Sanhedrin whose job is Torah and teaching? That's not your job anymore. You're now Mishnah Lamelech. Another question in another style way as how can we lie that even Sanhedrin themselves was calling Yonim is Torah Kanal? They're all of Torah. So zayin achiv zu mevater zayin if terosim umnosim to the batzolos nefoshes, that they recognize there is an obligation to forego the level of terosim umnosim, which is the Sanhedrin, to save lives. Why would they? In their view, it should be like only Torah. And is the beer in them. So the Rebbe explained this by quoting the Tana Velio. What really the mission and function of the Sanhedrin? it's more than just sitting and giving instructions, but it is to implement and to see that the instructions are actually done. The Sanhedrin themselves do that. That's a level of doing, not just learning, not just terasim nosim. Is the beating them? Steht in Tono de Velio. Hoyolahem le Sanhedrin gedoylo leilech. The Sanhedrin gedoylo needed to go. The liksher chavolim shel barzel b'mosneihem, and to tie metal ropes on their hips. Talmidei Chachamim used to wear long clothes, but here we would send them out on the road. So how would they the long robes, the long clothing are not meant for long trips. So they would gird themselves and tie metal ropes on their hips. They would raise their clothes above their knees. And they would go around in all cities in Eretz Yisrael, and they would teach the Yidden, would teach them Torah. The din is, the halacha is, as Ben Sanhedrin hat goyle given in Mekoyim Abelishkas Hagozis, when it's not in its place. Here, in other words, we're going to explain that the fact that we're moving the Sanhedrin is not such an easy thing, because once the Sanhedrin is moved from its place in Lishkas Hagozis, that's the room of Gozis that outside of the Beis Hamikdash, which was the place the Sanhedrin said, Ken zinitan zayin din nefoshes, then that Sanhedrin cannot judge capital cases. Thus haste. So what we're doing over here, as dur them was v'yachzir b'chol ha'yoros Yisrael, they're going to be circling around in all Jewish communities to teach Torah and to go ahead and verta yerida in their koyach v'toikim Sanhedrin. There's a descent in the power and the force Sanhedrin. They can no longer do din and nefoshes. The Rebbe brings down the order. There could be other laws also they can't do. But from deswegen is hoyolahem, they should have. That was an obligation, achiyu, leilachul v'chol ha'yoros Yisrael, to circle in all the lands. Them can verstehen. So what do we see from this? We can understand as the Ivker Tavkit from the Sanhedrin, that the main mission of the Sanhedrin is Hoyrol Rabbim, is by instructing the public. And when you instruct the public with them, Hatzolas Rabbim, to save the many. Und zu lidem darf ze yored sein, and for that they need to descend from their koyach v'toikev al Sanhedrin, from their power and force as Sanhedrin, kidei zu sein mimezake harabim, in order to merit the public, the community. That is what Sanhedrin is about, not just Terosim Nosir. Now, derech ze is their biur v'inyaneinu, and similar is the explanation in our case, in our matter. Hagam, although as durch them was Mordechai is givoren a Mishnah lemelech, through this that Mordechai became second to the king, is givoren a yiride in zayin chashivus, that this brought about a descent in his importance als chaver hasanhedrin, as a member of the Sanhedrin. Fun Bosar Dalet to Bosar Chamisha, from after 4 to after 5, from the 5th to the 6th. As hot by him gefällt that Inyan Umayla, he was lacking the idea and the greatness, the advantage from Terosum Nosum, only being involved in Torah. Is Ober the Yeride Kidai, that descent is worthy. Afilu mitzad inyonom from Sanhedrin Gufa, even what the Sanhedrin himself needs to do that. Baldos is to Tevas Arabim, since this is for the public good. Alderech and Isbar Leil in Tono de Velio, as similar to as explained before in Tono de Velio. And now the Rebbe brings down that this was actually the conduct of the previous Rebbe to take away time from his studies to steal, rob time from his studies in order to be involved in the community activities. Tess, the conduct of my father-in-law, the Rebbe, was as reflect Gazlanen from sein Zeit, that he would rob from the time was gewollt gekent, which he was able to upgeben, to devote for limud HaTorah la'atzmei, for studying of Torah for himself, avodas Hashem la'atzmei, and serving Hashem, his service to Hashem for himself. Und sich vernommen dann mit inyonei askonus v'atzolos nefoshes, and he occupied himself then with matters of community activity and saving lives. Und hat das euch gemont von a Chelek choshev von seine Talmidim und Mekosharim. He also demanded this from a good portion, a good section of his students and those who were connected in Mekosharim to the Rebbe, as euch sie sollen sich finden in dem Weg, that they too should conduct themselves in this way. Und hat eingeführt, and he established as afilu talmidai yeshivas, even students that are in yeshiva zolum bein hasdorim, should in between the seders avegebun agvisen tel von zeir zaman, to give away a certain portion of their time to disseminating, spreading out Torah and Judaism on the outside. Und dies askus is zeitenweise in an Eufen, and this occupations at time was in such a way as a chelik godel from the zman ha'fotze, that a big portion of the time that you're disseminating, spreading, get avek, nit Eufen etzem lernen mitzvah. You don't actually learn with the other person. But if tzorchit tzibur, talking about general community needs. It's not like every moment that you are not learning, you're learning with somebody else. No, the general community activities. Talmidim, bringing effort to bring in students, to organize a place to study, to raise the needed amounts, to cover the expenses, etc. There's haste. That means even those people tied, connected to the Rebbe, is nor their standing, and their level is only as the Babli says, in am Eufun fun Teirosom mishtameres. They're only, it's guarded, it's not increased. Darfen sie abgeben von sehr Zman, they still need to give away from their time. Afile in them Eufen, even in such a way, was durch them wird fällen in their limud HaTorah avodas Hashem, even if they're going to be missing out in their study of Torah and service of Hashem, to leave Toivas Harabim because of the benefit of the many. So even like the Bavli, they're not going to be increased. And yet you devote your time in order to be the good of the community, of the many. Now, the Ragachover, he was unique. He was a different. Baldi Hanoga now, from the Ragachover, the above mentioned conduct of the Ragachover is nor for Yechidas Gula in Yedin Doir. That's only for select individuals in every generation. They are at the level that Torah is their crafts. And their idea is similar with us is given by Mikzah Sanhedrin, like it was by the part of the Sanhedrin who Pirshu separated. They need to constantly add in the knowledge of Torah, always adding and never giving it up. But they say that but the set type of service for majority of the majority, I feel from Bnei Torah, even for people who are occupied in Torah, people of Torah, is Kipsaka Din, is, as we know, there's a ruling already of Bisman Hazeh, is the Tom mentioned was Teirosam Omnosim. There are no people whose crafts is Torah. Since we even waste time for other matters, for sure, we should do this to save lives and for the benefit of the many. And to point out, as it pertains to my father-in-law, the Rebbe himself, is me yoideya oifen avedosei, who really knows the great service of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So we have to learn the Frierdiker Rebbe's service that he gave up was not just a regular. Who knows? As the Rebbe Bechlal is doch Yedua, the Torah from Baal Shem Tov, from Posik, the Baal Shem Tov teaching on the Posik, it says, Kumi oiri kivo oirech, stand up, my light, because your light has come. The glory of Hashem shines you. So what does the Baal Shem Tov says? Atem nisiye Yisrael, you leaders of Israel, that you put aside your own learning, your own service, bishvil toiva sarabim, for the benefit of the many. Was wird sein mit euch? So what is going to be with you? You're putting away your Torah for the many. Is those kumi oiri, that my light stands up, be'oir haproti lahakloli, the personal light is kibo oirech, in the general light. The haste as Nesiya Yisrael Hoban Abracha Miyuchedes. Leaders of Israel have a specific, unique blessing. As Ezol by Zenit Felun in Zeir Torah V'Avodah, that in their learning and service should not be lacking. The Adrab, on the contrary, Bo Oirech, your light comes and the glory of Hashem shines on you. It's a much higher level, even than what it says in the Yerushalmi, that there is a blessing given to Rosam. We're talking about the Kvod Hashem shining on the personal, on the level of the leaders of the Nesiya Yisrael. Yud, das ist der Hero von Anhogas Mordechai. Für uns Benegel Lepoil. This is the lesson from Mordechai's conduct for us in actuality. As the known teaching of the Baal Shem Tov from Maimer HaMishnah on the saying of the Mishnah, HaKoires HaMegillah Lemafreya Lo Yotza. If you read the Megillah backwards, that it was an old historic that you're reading, then you have not fulfilled your obligation. You need to learn the lesson here. There was linked the Megillah, the one who reads the Megillah, on Nemendik, and you presume, you accept, Ados v'oseverter tzelt the Megillah, that the story that is related in the Megillah is azach v'osot getrofen in an ovar, something that happened in the past, lemafreya, and it has no application, had no relevant, no connection to the present, is lo yotzo, they didn't fulfill the obligation. You have to have a lesson. As fodder from uns an hanhogya. From us, it's expected, it's demanded, a conduct me'ain, similar, unal kol ponim shemetz menei, or some small part from Anhogas Mordechai, from Mordechai's conduct. So verna Mishnah lemelech, to become second to the king, kidei zu sein adoyrish toiv le'amoy, in order to be seeking good for his people. The doiver sholem l'chol and speaking peace to all of his, to all who see. All afilu ben tzulibdem is a rotzu b'loif tzurei v'achad. Even if, because of this, giving yourself, devoting yourself, you only become accepted to the majority of the world. Not everybody, you still got to do that. Although that this kind of conduct by many and many, this is associated, it's tied to a descent. Because of this, you need to forego of their eigener shlemus on your own wholesomeness. Is kidai the yerida to leave their toyeles v'toivas harabim. It is worth it, this descent, for the benefit and for the good of the many of the community. We find this also by everyone in their life, also as an individual and as a detail. You see this type of, when the neshama comes down from above, would it had everything in order to work with the body in this world. His soul descends from a high roof, all the way on the top, to a deep pit, in order to be a ruler, a mishnah lamelech, v'shoilet, and dominant of guf, nefesh, of the body. Nefesh habam is the animal soul, the chelkei ba'olam, and the person's portion in this world. They koivish zayin, to conquer them, von zei machen adira le'yizborech, and to make from them a dwelling place for Hashem blessing. Under noch, Azerot Chasana, talking about that the soul comes down, first as a single individual, and then the person gets married. So in addition to that descent to bringing the neshama into the body, now there's a further descent. L'shoina Megillah, liish kol ish soider that he should be dominant in his house. Kamaimer Chazal, as the saying verse says, kosher woman does her husband's wishes, which is soider b'beisei. What does he rule in his house? The ruling in the house to make sure the house would be appropriate in all matters is oich. This soror is that also is associated with a descent. Marriage is a descent. Kamaimer Chazal, as our sage blessed memories say, nochis darga nesiv itza, descent a step and marry a woman. Weil a mensch muss mevater sein. If sein eigene inyonim, a person needs to forego his own level and own status to leave Toivas Beise for the benefit of his home. Das is euch die Hasbara. This is also the explanation of them was me gefind that we find an ilui in Oiskim Betzorchei Tzibur. Those who occupy themselves in the needs of the community, afilu oivdi was teirosam umnoson, even on those whose crafts is studying Torah, working for the community has an advantage, even of those who totally devote their life to Torah as a craft. Divos teirosam umnoson darfun mafsik zayin li kriyas shema. When your Torah is your craft, you still need to interrupt to read the Shema. Those who are occupied in needs of the community, do not interrupt even for reading of the Shema. Although, if you occupy yourself in the community needs, but you do it with emunah, with faith and dedication, felt in limud and you are missing out, and it ends up diminishing, lacking your own Torah and your own wholesomeness. These as Chazal zogen, to the extent that the sages tell us that hatil aleihem tzorich tzibur ve'im kolim aleihem, that the people who were causing problems, he says, put community affairs on them, and they will be gone on their own. That means doing in tzorich tzibur ve'emunah, you have to pay a heavy price for that, and yet from deswegen. So that means that your expectation of tzorich tzibur ve'emunah is a sacrifice. Deswegen is davke in them and durch them, specifically in it and through it, that ilu nifla from toivas harabim, the tremendous greatness of the benefit of the public. If we need the conduct of Mordechai as far as saving Jewish bodies, physical, how much more so? As darfa zoizain, that it needs to be so, when es kommt zu der Hatzola von Yiddish and Neshamis, when it comes to saving Jewish souls. Medarf uplegen the eigen shlemus. You must delay your own wholesomeness to leave Hashlamas, Atzolas, Nefoshes, in order to save life. To zayin adoiver sholem l'chol zarei, to speak, see to all of his children, all of Hashem's children, all Jewish people. Bis as werd werden der Yisrael ois in tshuva, till it will become the Jews, the Yidden will do tshuva, meyad hein nigolim, and immediately they will be redeemed, b'korev mamash, so very soon. This is Mesichas Purim Tovshin Lamed Gimel, and Purim b'Shabbos Parshas Tisa Tovshin Lamed Hey.